Across the country tonight, families and friends are gathering to celebrate Thanksgiving. It's a time, of course, to eat turkey, have some pumpkin pie, and to count our blessings. But you know, it can also sometimes be a tricky time, right? Around that dinner table when the conversation turns to certain controversial events. So tonight, we're going to take a look at some of the stories that have kind of become fault lines at the dinner table near you, and our own round table of sorts. Welcome to the Stories Thanksgiving, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. So 2017 has in many ways been a year like no other, right? President Trump took office in January, much to the delight of his fans and to the consternation of his critics. In fact, a new study finds that politics really are impacting our gatherings. In some cases, they cut celebrations short. Last year, a poll was done. Republican voters apparently were more likely to bail on their Democratic families than vice versa. So are we going to see more of the same this year? We have put together a bipartisan audience to debate some of this year's hottest topics so that you don't have to, or to get your conversations ready, right? Including social justice is on the menu tonight. We're also going to talk about gun rights, sexual harassment, one of the hottest topics of right now, and of course, the tax cuts and who will really get them, an issue that the president repeatedly pushed prior to his inauguration.
On taxes, I'm going to give a massive tax cut to every worker and small business in this country.
Everyone's taxes we want to go down.
And we will massively cut taxes for the middle class, the forgotten people, the forgotten men and women of this country who built our country. We will massively lower taxes.
Massively lower taxes. So now tax reform could become a reality in just a matter of weeks. So will you get what you were promised? Let's try to kick it around the table. So raise your hands if you think that you are going to get a tax cut. Just a couple. Really? So you guys are convinced that with this plan, you are not actually going to get a tax cut? Who wants to tell me about that?
Dr. Darren Porcher. I think Trump is coming to this with good spirits. However, the bipartisan bickering is going to prevent him from getting the tax reform passed. He's looking at the Reagan-era tax cuts, and I think it would be phenomenal for us as a society. But when we look at high tax states such as New York and New Jersey, you have Republican congressmen that are voting against it, and I think that's going to lead to the demise of this bill moving forward.
Well, you're right to a certain sense. The whole hitch is assault issues for New York and New Jersey. I disagree with that aspect of the tax bill, but every other aspect of it lowers our taxes. For instance, you don't pay taxes on the first $24,000. That's huge all across the country. So yes, will there be some issues with the tax deduction on home mortgage interest? Yes, but I think the other cuts are going to more than make up for that. I'm hoping, again, being a New Yorker, I'm kind of
clearly
conflicted.
in some parts of the country, the state and local tax deduction is a huge issue. And we know from talking to members of Congress in California, New York, that they're going to probably vote against this. So will it pass? And how do you think it's going to impact you?
My name is Jackie Cornell. I'm with New Jersey Policy Perspective. And I think the thing to remember is that taxes and budgets are moral documents as well as fiscal documents. And this bill does things like, tax graduate students who are trying to get master's degrees. It also repeals the Affordable Care Act's mandate, which, we've seen over the past 9 months that people like the ACA. We had overwhelming support for it. So it's interesting to see these issues that if you were to ask someone, how do you feel about people going and getting an education or having health care, those are pretty evergreen and people support them.
Here's the problem with that, right? A moral document, you say, right? So some people feel that it's immoral to have $20 trillion in debt. Some people feel that their tax dollars, when they get sent to Washington, are being wasted. So for them, they find perhaps a different kind of immorality in the way that we pay taxes and the way the money is spent. Joe, you want to jump in?
Connor, yeah, what's moral about me paying $17,000 in property taxes for a third of an acre of land? It's crazy. Bergen
What do you say to those who say move?
I say, well, I need a job. You got to work somewhere. I can go, but this is where the jobs are, and I got to stay where we are. We have a family, and why should I have to move? We do the best we can.
So what do you say to those who argue, well, you need to talk to your state and local legislators, and they've been charging too high, the tax rates are too high in those areas, and that's not the federal government's fault, it's the people who elected your local officials.
Well, and we elect our local official, we are responsible for that, but at the same time, if we want to raise the economy. Look, it shouldn't be about punishing people who voted one way or the other. The idea is to put more money back in the hands of the private sector. That's what raises the whole country. Yeah. So if you give me more money or everyone else here, we can make good decisions based on the money we have. We'll make right investments, and we'll raise the whole economy. It has nothing to do with anything.
Let me pose another question to all of you. Is it okay that 70% of the tax burden is paid by only 10% of the country?
No. That's immoral.
Sir?
No, it's not. Anthony Colangelo. I own a gun range, and I live in New Jersey, and we just elected Governor Free Stuff as our governor for the state. So it's not.
He's referring to Phil Murphy, the new governor of New Jersey. Go ahead.
The burden should not be on such a small percentage of people. The problem is in our country now, the takers are outnumbering the makers, and with gerrymandering and redistricting, we're doomed to socialism.
I would have to disagree. I'm sitting here as Kristen Halber as a graduate student, and what I'm hearing is that I don't even care that I get less taxes under $24,000 because my income has apparently tripled just from getting an education. And you say that the takers are getting to run the country? All I see is that if someone goes to school and they can actually afford it and they can pay fully by themselves, they get to take that deduction. And because I already started off behind as a poorer person, now I'm feeling the burden for these taxes and paying for these tax cuts.
Good point.
Well, I think I have to disagree with that to a degree, because what she's talking about is the graduate student stipend is being taxed, so that's one issue. But, you know, I'm a Republican district leader in Harlem, and if you look at what the average income is in our neighborhoods inside of inner cities, one, we have people being able to see more coming home at the end of the day on their checks. Two, we have an opportunity right now with this tax to at least unwind portions of the ACA, which was wound into, I think, a tremendous amount of legislation, which it shouldn't have been. And then the question really becomes, what kind of decisions can you make? I mean, in terms of health care for the constituents in my district, the simple fact that an executive order was signed that I could buy health care in another state, that moves us away from a single person having to pay about $800 a month in health care insurance here to maybe paying $400 a month and using that Pennsylvania health care. That makes a lot of difference to people who are counting nickels and dimes.
But 80% of New Yorkers and 80% of the country are receiving subsidies to cover their health care. So yes, there's a small majority of folks who are paying a higher amount. I'm one of them. I'm covered on an ACA plan, and I pay, significantly for it. But for the large majority of people that are covered because of the ACA, they're getting support to pay for those monthly premiums.
I'm going to have to strongly disagree with that, because there's every single small business owner in America, every single startup in America, every single company that's under 1,000 people in America is dealing with some very significant health care burdens in terms of cost. In addition to which, you've had major insurers pull out of marketplaces across the United States, continually driving up costs. The whole point of Obamacare was to cover that 30%. And we're just not even able to do that.
Let me just pose one more larger question here before we run out of time. In terms of how this is being paid for, does it bother any of you that it's basically moving money around rather than cutting spending? Cutting government spending has not even been a topic this time around, and we're told that, oh, we'll get to that later.
Well, Rocco Limatone, I'm commercial sales and finance manager at Scarsdale Ford. I'm a small business owner, and I'm with the Republican committee in my county. What I see and what a lot of people fail to overlook is, as this new tax plan hopefully comes to fruition, and people are paying less taxes, they're going to have more take-home pay. As the rest of the president's plan evolves and more businesses open up here, there's going to be more tax revenue to the government. That tax revenue, that increased tax revenue, basic economics, is going to reduce spending because we're going to have more tax revenue coming in. Now, during the Obama years, because there's so many people on the government dole and all these special interest programs, less tax revenue was coming in. So what did you have to do? You had to either cut services, which the Democrats aren't going to do, so you had to raise people's taxes to the 1% to get them to pay for everything else. Yeah. But see, this is it's a whole, what I call is the whole pie approach. Rather than just looking at one slice of the pie, he's taking the whole economy and saying, well, if we give people jobs and make jobs available, let's put it that way, not give, make jobs available, boost the economy, there's going to be more revenue coming into the business. The business is the government. With that increased revenue, you're going to see spending decrease. It's more money for everyone.
We do have some pretty rosy forecasts for the 2018 economy, so we'll see if that happens. Thanks, you guys.